Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Tuesday, July the 1st. Welcome to the month of July and welcome to another conversation with our good friend George Rodriguez from South Texas. George, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Well, I want to say Happy Canada Day. This is July 1st is I'm not sure if this is like their July 4th. I'm not
Yeah, it is.
100%.
Yes,
It is. Okay.
Their
All right.
Independence Day, yeah.
Independence. So Happy Canada Day. Always, have friends up in Canada. I know there's a few who watch the video, and so Happy Canada Day to them. And I remember growing up there was a great rock and roll band from Canada called the Guess Who.
Yes.
And they were a fabulous band from our time. And so I remember their music was really good. And so, again, Happy Canada Day. And I've noticed something around here, George, maybe you have in South Texas too, and that is that there's a lot of Canadians around here.
Yeah, there are. I'm surprised of all these folks, especially that they stick around at summer. I have run into several of them in the past month, and it surprises me that they stick around for the summer.
That's brave. That is brave. If you live in, if you spend your life and times up in Canada and you come down to Texas, that is a cultural shock like you have not seen. But I think a lot of them, to be more specific, a lot of them who I've met are in the energy industry because of the relationship with oil in Alberta, I guess, and Texas. So that's where a lot of them are. So there's a couple at our church who are Canadians who live here in the area. So anyway, they're wonderful people. They're great hockey players, and they're just fun people. I guess I'll just say that Canadians are fun people. But I'm going to say something they're not going to like, and that is we haven't had a Stanley Cup winner from a Canadian team since 1993.
Wow.
Or something like that. It's been a long time. And if you had said to me 20 years ago that the last 20 teams to win the Stanley Cup were going to be teams based in American cities and not Canada.
In Florida, even.
Yes, in Florida, 2 times in Florida. I would have said, I don't believe that. But I guess at the end of the day, these are professional players. And they're not really representing Canada. They're representing themselves in a professional league. But I would have never believed. I mean, I thought that at least once in a while, Montreal or Toronto or Edmonton would win one. And here we are many years later.
Let's also remember that Toronto, the Blue Jays, won the World Series. So
They did.
Who would have thought that?
Who would have thought that? And they did it back to back, actually. A few years ago. So yeah, I mean, it's it can happen. It can happen. So Happy Canada Day. Now, I want to begin with what happened in the Senate bill, because I mean, the Senate bill that just passed, I guess, 50-50 with the vice president breaking the tie. It happened several times with President Biden, so it's not anything new. But here's the frustration I have with some of the Republican senators who voted no. I'm not exactly sure what they're getting at, because they're not going to get a better deal with the Democrats, and they're not going to get any. I mean, you cannot do anything more than what is being done with respect to reconciliation, because as you know, reconciliation is a very small window that you have to do these things, and it has to be related to taxes. So when I hear Elon Musk say that he's going to form a third party because what is he going to do? I mean, how successful is that going to be? I don't think very. And I just think it's silly. I mean, the fact is that this is as much as you can do. And let's get this done. Let's get this 2017 tax in. Let's get the overtime, or it's been done, subject to the House approval. And the money for the border, I'll take that. I'll take that to begin. And then let's come back later, George, through the appropriation process, and let's try to get other things done. I mean, that's how I look at it. We can try to get other things done later, George.
I agree. We've got a situation right now where Republicans lead both the House and the Senate by the slimmest of margins. by 3 in the Senate, and by what, 5 in the House. And you cannot afford to pick and choose technical issues. I mean, that's how I look at it. I mean, I'm sure that some of the folks feel very, very strongly that we've got to cut the spending. Yes, I agree. We've got to cut the spending. Yes, we've got to lower the deficit. We've got to do that. However, right now, we need to make sure that we pass the bill, and then we can go back and do what many other Republican presidents have done, is that they just don't fund the things that they don't want to, and in that way they at least kill those projects that are wasting money. A good example is the Clean Air Act, the clean energies projects that we've got all over the place that are just absolute guttons to swallow tax money, because all they do is subsidize the energy industry. And if those can just be cut off, we'd be saving a lot of money. We'd be saving a lot of waste.
That's right. And one of them is the electric vehicle subsidy.
Yes.
Which I've never understood.
Tesla.
Yeah, well, Tesla, of course. And maybe that's why Elon Musk is upset. I don't know. But I will tell you this. If you have to have government subsidies, I don't know how long these subsidies are supposed to go on.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they were hoping that they'd go forever.
Right. But I mean, if an electric car cannot stand on its own and has to require more and more subsidies, at some point, you have to ask yourself the question, maybe the American people don't want this car. Exactly. And maybe that's why they're not buying. The Tesla is an amazing car, and I'm delighted that they're building them in Texas, and I'm delighted that they're creating jobs and prosperity here. But the reality is that it is not a very practical car for many people, particularly here in Texas, because of the distances. I mean, I'm traveling right now, and I can tell you, you cannot go from Dallas to Houston with an electric car without having to stop and take up a lot of time, charging your car. It's not like stopping at a gas station somewhere and pumping it. In 30 minutes, you're back on the road. You can even go to the bathroom during that time. So, I mean, we don't need more subsidies if it doesn't stand on its own. The other thing that I'm disappointed with Elon Musk and some of the things that he said was, he's talking about forming a third party, and I'm sitting there saying, come on, Elon, I can give you a little history of the United States. And I can tell you, I cannot remember a time when forming a third party did much of anything. I mean, yes, it is true that the Whigs became the Republicans and Abraham Lincoln was elected. That's true. But that was the last time, honestly, that I can remember anything like that, George.
No, third parties are very, very difficult. He's commenting, or he's saying that anyone who votes, any Republican that votes for that bill, he's going to primary, he's going to pump money, and he's going to create a third party. That sounds very, very serious. That is not a good thing for the country. That it's not a good thing, definitely, for the Republican Party and for the American taxpayer. The Democrats are far too well financed, far too well organized for a third party to be organized at this point that would do anything but hurt conservatives in the Republican Party.
Well, that's it. I mean, if Elon Musk thinks that basically doing to the Republicans now what was done to George Bush by Ross Perot, I mean, how did that work out? That just basically elected Bill Clinton. So it just amazes me how he says these things. Obviously, he's not thinking about what he's saying, because if he was, he would understand that there's no realistic path to a third party. The third party is not going to have enough seats in the Senate or the House. Look at Ross Perot got 19% of the vote and he ended up 19% of the vote, and he ended up, as you know, he ended up with nothing in the House and nothing in the Senate. He didn't get a single electoral vote. So at the end
Other
of the
than
night,
hurt the people, the very people that could have helped him, he
that's
hurt.
it. That's it. So I don't know. I mean, I think I'm disappointed. I really am disappointed. Now, this bill is not perfect by any means, but this bill does have they're making the 2017 cuts permanent, which is a smart thing. They're also eliminating overtime, I guess, taxes on overtime, which is a smart thing, and on tips. I like that. I think the people who work for tips at restaurants and all of that could use a little help with that. And then, of course, it is funding more border wall, I believe. I'm not exactly up to speed on that. You may be. It is giving us more money for the border, but I'm okay with it. I think the product is enough to pass it to the next step. And what I hope the next step is, George, is appropriations so that we can begin to really hit hard at some of these government programs. But you cannot do it through reconciliation. That's just the reality of it. We're in reconciliation right now, and the window is very small. And that's just the reality of it, guys.
Yeah, I agree. It is really a situation where the only argument that I think that the Democrats have right now is that it cuts services. What they mean by that is that it cuts off money to their constituents, and the bigger as we all know, the bigger the bigger the government, the more dependent you are on it, and they have grown a tremendous number of people to be dependent on the government. And that's, whether it's a business that gets subsidized and therefore says we're going to lose jobs, or individuals that just depend on money. I mean, how many people have been receiving funding for not working through the COVID programs?
Right.
So.
Oh, I know. And what's interesting about this requirement, this particular bill, is going to require people to work to get Medicaid. And, that sounds awfully familiar, George. I have a post coming out tomorrow about this. Oh, it sounds awfully familiar to something called welfare reform that President Clinton did years ago. And that actually, of all the things that President Clinton did, when he worked together with Speaking English, I thought they got some things done that were actually good. And welfare reform was one of them, where they basically said to people, you're going to have to work if you want welfare. And so this is no different than that. Medicaid.
That was the last time that you had a moderate or conservative Democrats. That was last time.
That's right. And he on purpose wanted to move the party to the center because I think he understood how deadly all of this was to the Democrat Party. So no question about it that he did this welfare reform, and everybody thought it worked out great when he did it, and all of a sudden it's not working for him anymore. But what can I tell you? I just think it makes me angry when I hear, for example, Rand Paul is a good example of what I'm talking about. I like Rand Paul. For the most part, Rand Paul is a very good senator, and if I was in Kentucky, I vote for him. But Rand Paul sometimes lives in a fantasy land. I mean, where he thinks that this is an economics 101 class. Well, it's not. Governing is very complicated. And if he doesn't like this or he doesn't like that, okay, I understand, Rand Paul, but come on, we need to get realistic. I'm not beating up on him, as I like him generally, but I just feel like, like the fellow from North Carolina, what in the heck is he thinking in voting no? I mean, who's he helping? And then, of course, Susan Collins in Maine, she's in a tough situation. I mean, she's the only Republican who could win up there. And I kind of knew she was never going to be a part of it. And that's fine. I think we can lose her. But anyway, it's frustrating. It's frustrating, George. That's all I can tell you, because these people are not being realistic in how they're looking at things. That's just my reaction.
Good. I mean, I'm not sure what else I can add to that. It is, we need to understand, or people in Washington need to understand, that it's about winning elections at this point, just as much as it is just governing correctly. And unfortunately, we've got the media that spins against you, and you got to be prepared.
Right, and it's about winning election. It's not a political science class where you're trying to win a debate in a political science class. This is winning elections because whoever wins elections gets to present the package in the Congress. And I'd rather have us do it than them. Bottom line. That's just all there is. Okay, well, let's go to Texas, George, because there's as you know, a Senate election, and it's going to be contested, it looks like, on both sides. Obviously, Senator Cornyn, Attorney General Paxton, we've talked about that before, but it's all of a sudden getting interesting on the Democrat side because it looks like, former Representative Colin Allred, who ran the last time, has already jumped in. It looks like Beto O'Rourke is thinking about jumping in. And then Joaquin Castro from your neighborhood is thinking about jumping in. And there's another fellow whose name I honestly don't remember, who's not a very well-known person. He's a member of the Texas legislature, I think also in your area down in San Antonio. But these three guys are, I heard somebody say this today. I wish I knew who said it, okay? I heard somebody on the radio say today that if the best you can do is dig up the guy who lost in 2018 and lost in 2022 by over 10 points for governor, and the guy who lost to Ted Cruz by 9 points, and Joaquin Castro, who I don't believe has ever won anything outside of a very Democrat district. If that's all you can do, George, that tells me, I heard this on the radio and I agree, that this is a party that doesn't have a big bench, George.
No, they don't. I mean, it's obvious. First of all, is the messaging. What can they present to Texans? We know that Texans are a very conservative bunch. I mean, the past 6 elections, statewide elections, the Republican Party has gained and gained and gained. Every single time that you hear that Texas is going to be turning blue or it's going to be turning purple, it turns more red. And so at this point, I am not sure what they can present, what they can say, particularly when they've got some nutcase in New York running for mayor.
Right.
When you've got some nutcases in California setting cars on fires and waving Mexican flags, what are these people going to run on?
Well, I don't expect any of them to be endorsing the nominee in New York, but hopefully they get the question from the media. Hey, do you support this guy in New York? Because that is really, I think, and I have a post about this, came out today at American Thinker, where I am linking to a lady who wrote this article. Her name is Sasha Stone. And I think this lady is 100% correct, that this is the Democrats are basically reaping what they have been doing for the last 10 years. I mean, they've basically been for the last 10 years doing nothing more than running against Trump. Everything Trump is evil. He's horrible. He's a dictator. Everything is a crisis. The world is going to come to an end. The stars are going to be falling tonight. I mean, everything is a crisis with these people. And then now all of a sudden they get surprised that somebody like this happens in New York, because this young man in New York is nothing but a reflection of who they are. I mean, this he's against capitalism. Well, where did he learn that? Where did he learn to be an anti-capitalist? Probably in the New York party. So, I mean, it's just crazy where this party is. And I think they may need a couple of more defeats, George. They may need a couple of more whippings in the electoral cycle. Now, I'm growing more and more confident about the Republicans in the House in 26. And the reason I'm growing confident, George, is, as you probably heard, they're not going to redo the seats in Wisconsin. They're not going to redraw the congressional seats or the borders. So that means they're not going to be able to add 2 or 3 seats there as they were planning to. And there's also talk, and you may know about this, that Ohio is thinking about redoing their borders or their congressional districts, and Texas is thinking about it. I don't know. I mean, Texas thinks that we can add 2 more Republican senators just by redoing the districts. So that if we can do that in Texas and add 2 more, and Ohio can add 2 more, and Wisconsin keeps it the way it is, I think it's going to be very difficult for them to win any elections in the House, George.
Well, I always fear their creativity. I mean, I would have never thought that they would have won in 2020.
Right,
they figured out how to do it, and they will create a crisis and a disaster to push their agenda in some form or fashion. So I'm hoping that you're very, very much right. I mean, it certainly looks that way. I just don't see how they can win. I don't see how they can continue to prosper. But we'll have to see.
Well, and I agree with you and it's way too early to forecast. And so I agree with you that you got to play. I mean, as someone said, you always have to play like you're down by 10 points or whatever. Never assume that whatever lead you have, you're going to keep it, because there's a lot of crazy things that happen. And we always use the sports analogy, but there's always a fumble and there's always something that can happen that can turn the game around. But I do like our position in the Senate. I think that's a good position. But in the House, it's going to be tight. But I at least today, I believe that it's going to be that way. But I think the biggest problem they have, George, and I'll just say this at the end, the biggest problem is that they've created this Trump derangement syndrome generation. Well, all they think about 24/7 is Trump. That's right. They cannot have in fact, I was joking the other day to a friend. I said, invite 3 Democrats for lunch and tell them that whoever talks about Trump first picks up the tab. Because these people cannot talk about anything without going into a Trump derangement syndrome rant. I mean, I was on Univision here recently, and I was with a Democrat lady, and she starts talking about Trump being a dictator, and I said, well, he was elected, and then she goes, yeah, but so was Hitler. And I'm saying, so you're comparing, I said to this lady, so you're comparing the 2024 election with the 1933 election in Germany. You're making this comparison to make the point that Trump, these people are out of their heads. They're out of their minds. And I don't know how in the world they can continue to say these things and expect that the American people are going to take them seriously, George.
They say it with a straight face.
Say it with a straight face. And, I guess it's okay if they're speaking to each other. But eventually they're going to have to speak to people like you and me, who are going to realize how stupid they sound and how silly they sound. Well, George, another week of politics. The bill is now going to the House. And I'm assuming they're going to try to get that done as soon as possible. It will be tight. But hopefully they can do it for the same arguments that we were making before. Let's move this ball forward, and let's get this done. And then let's go after the different budgets through appropriations and cut as much as we can, George.
I agree. It'll be very interesting. I've already heard a couple of the congressmen on TV a little while ago that said now that it's coming back for reconciliation, they're gonna dig their heels in. So it'll be very interesting to see what form it takes and how long it takes.
Well, and yeah, that's right. And he may not get it by the 4th of July. That maybe that's a stretch. But knowing Trump, I never like to bet against Trump, I guess, because he seems to have this, he can pull the rabbit out of the hat so easily. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to be on the phone driving and persuading these Republicans to vote. And I wouldn't be surprised if he persuades enough of them just to get it over the line. Exactly. The idea is, let's just get it over the line. Let's sign it. And then, George, let's start going through these appropriations where we go budget after budget. And then, yeah, I agree with Elon
anybody that has ever, worked on a bill knows that once it's passed, once a bill becomes law, the devil is in the details.
Sure.
You can fix it, you can change it, you can do all sorts of things, you can ignore it. You know, it's not in stone. Everything
No.
but's in stone.
Right. But passing it is symbolic.
That's
You
the
got
thing.
Yeah, you got to get it done. Well, George, what are you going to do July 4th? Anything going on down in San Antonio?
Eat.
All right. Well, I don't blame you for that one. I don't blame you for that one because I think everybody does that, you know.
Barbecue. Wave a flag.
Yeah, that's right. Wave the flag and cook a lot of burgers. And as my late father used to say, enjoy your day. It's a day off for a lot of people. Just appreciate the great country we have and appreciate the great burgers we can cook.
That's right.
That's right. George, you have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you.
As always, thank you for joining us, and we'll get together soon.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, my pleasure. Our good friend George Rodriguez joining us today from San Antonio, South Texas, talking about this bill that came out of the Senate, headed to the House, and we'll see what happens when it gets there. My gut feeling is that it'll pass the House, and then we can get this reconciliation thing done, and then go after the big stuff through the budgetary, the appropriations process, and get cut as much as we can. Now, that's going to be a little more difficult because in the next round, you're going to need 60 votes in the Senate. Remember that. That's the big beauty of reconciliation, is that you only need 51. But the next round, where you go through appropriations, you got to get 60 votes, which means you're going to have to get 7 Democrats to go along with you. If you keep all 53 Republicans, you're going to need 7 Democrats. But in some cases you may get them, particularly when you get into some of the specific cuts that are being proposed. But it'll be more difficult. It's going to take more persuasion. But if you can negotiate some things, that's also a victory. In politics, you don't get everything. That's the thing that you have to remember. You get what you can and move on to the next step. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.